We are solving and graphing the inequality, and it says to give your answer in interval notation. I know we didn't cover interval notation, but like that part shouldn't matter. We did cover solving and graphing, and you have multiple choice options. So, anytime you are solving equations or inequalities, there's like 4 general steps to follow. So what is the first step? That if you see this in a problem, you should do it first. It's okay. Distribute if necessary. So it won't always be necessary. Do I need to distribute in this problem? So then move on to step 2. After distributing, you usually have to do what? And that again will be if necessary. We don't have to in this one, because if you look at the left side, there's no like terms there. If you look at the right side, no like terms there. So like terms have the same variables. So then you move on to step 3. Do you guys remember what step 3 is? Give you a hint. Multiply by. No. Here's more of a hint. Yeah. Okay, good. Move variable to one side. We definitely wrote these down in one of the lessons, by the way, but just again, if you need them again. So move the variable to one side. We do have variables on both sides, so pick one. It does not matter. Do you want to move the negative 7x or the negative 8x? Okay, I heard negative 7x, so we can do that. And whatever you do on one side of the symbol. Okay, so then by doing that, it cancels on the left. I just have 12. You don't flip the sign when you add. What's negative 8x plus 7x? Negative what? Okay, good. Because it's like negative 1x. You could just write negative x and then plus 21. So then after you've moved the variable to one side, then it's a matter of isolating the variable. And that's looking at what's being done to it and then doing the opposite. So look at all that's being done to this x. It's being multiplied by -1. That's the coefficient if it's not written. And it's being added to 21. So what's farther, the -1 or the 21? And how do I cancel the 21? And then do that on both sides. Don't flip the sign for subtracting. 12 minus 21. Good. And then I have -9 greater than negative x. Is the x alone? No. No. How do I cancel the -1 that's being multiplied by it? Divide by it. Good. Do that on both sides. Do I need to flip the inequality symbol when I do that? Yes. Yes, because I divided a negative on both sides. So you do it when you divide a negative on both sides or when you multiply a negative on both sides. You need to flip that symbol. And then what's -9 divided by -1? 9. So then you definitely don't want to pick the ones that have 33. We're between these two. So we have a circle on the 9. They're pointing in opposite directions. You need to pick the one and look at the 9 compared to the x, which is bigger. The x, because the opening's facing the x. So I need to pick the one that's pointing to numbers that are bigger than the 9. So that being C or D on my page. On my page, it's C. Yours page, it could be shuffled. So make sure you pick the one that is pointing to the numbers that are bigger than the 9. Questions on that? So I do want to suggest, even though we can still get the right answer, always move like the smaller variable, like I would have moved the -8x. so that it's less likely you have to worry about a negative. But otherwise, just remember the rule. So questions on this one? Questions on others from any? Justina? Number 2 on the constructed response. Okay, so that one, you are solving inequalities algebraically, and they are just one variable, meaning like instead of x and y, it's just x or something like that. You do have to be able to do that on your constructed response. That's why it's on your practice constructed response. And you need to be able to show steps. So saying I put it in Desmos is not going to work for that. Plus, also, a lot of people don't even know how to interpret the answer when they put it in Desmos, so I don't recommend it. Know how to solve it algebraically. Did you need help with both A and B? Okay. So then let's start with A, and there's lots of ways you can go about solving. If you look at A, we have 2 fractions, so those are usually harder to work with. How can I make any fraction not a fraction anymore? Times by the denominator. Now I have 2 different denominators. If you are able to think of a number that'll cancel out both in one step, then great. If not, just do them one at a time. So what would you multiply this inequality by to cancel out one or both of the fractions? Okay, so Jude is saying times it by 10. If you want to look at like my period 3 recording, we solved it a different way. But as long as you're not like breaking any rules, then you should still get the same answer. All right, let's see what happens when we multiply the entire thing by 10. All right, so when I times this by 10, really, and I'll kind of simplify it in the next step. I get something like this, which, what is 10 divided by 5? 2. So then what I'm gonna actually write now is 2 outside parentheses, x minus 4, and then continue. When I do 10x over 10, that cancels and just becomes x. It's 10 divided by 10. And then what's 10 times 3? 30. So if you're able to think of a number that when you multiply it, it cancels both, then that's a good strategy. Otherwise, just do it one at a time. This is much easier to solve now. You can use those same steps we did earlier. Do I need to distribute in this one? Yes. So distribute that 2. What do you get from distributing that 2? Okay, good. Bring everything else down. Also, on a side note, I didn't have to change the sign because I multiplied by a positive 10 on each side. So the sign still stays the same. So we distributed. After distributing, check to see if you can combine like terms. I cannot. So now move the variable to one side. Which one do you want to move? And how would you cancel this x? Subtract it. Whatever you do on one side of the symbol. And what's 2x minus x? So on the left, I have x minus 8. On the right, I have just 30 because the x canceled. Now look at what's being done to the x. What's opposite of minusing 8? And whatever you do on one side. So in that case, I get x greater than 38. Questions on that? All right, I think in third hour, it took longer because we multiplied it by 5 instead first, which only eliminated one of the fractions, but it's up to you. We still got the same answer. So now inequality B. What's going to be my first step in inequality B? Distribute. And I actually have to distribute twice. Once here and one's over here. So 5x is still there. I'm just going to copy it over. What do I get from distributing the negative 3? Is that all? Okay, good. Sorry. Okay, negative 3x minus 18 is right. Less than or equal to 8. And then what am I distributing over here? A negative 1. So if it's not written, it's implied to be 1. And especially when it's negative, it does matter. So like multiply both of these by a negative 1. What do you get from distributing there? Is that all? Plus 7, because negative 1 times negative 7 is a positive 7. So put plus 7. All right, so we distributed. Do I need to combine like terms on the left side? What are my like terms on the left side? And when I combine them, I get, okay, good, bringing down that minus 18. On the right side, do I have any like terms? What are they? And 7 and. So any single numbers, you're always allowed to combine. So what's 8 plus 7? 15, then minus x. Now we're on to the next step, which is move the variable to one side. Which one do you want to move? And how would you cancel the negative x? Good, do it on both sides. 2x plus x is 3x minus 18. Notice I've not needed to change the sign at all because I didn't do multiplying or dividing the negative on both sides. Now it's a matter of dividing, or not dividing, but isolating the x. Start with what's farther. So would that be the 3 or the 18? How do I cancel the minus 18? How do we do them? Good. So then on the left, I have 3x. On the right, that equals what? Good. 3x, opposite of multiplying 3 would be 2. And do that on both sides. Do I need to flip the sign for that? No, because I'm dividing the positive. So just leave the sign the same, like you would an equal sign. And it's going to be less than or equal to 33 divided by 3. Questions on that one? Okay, so yes, you do need to solve inequalities in one variable algebraically. I encourage you to use Desmos to check your answer, but you still have to show steps to get the full point. All right, questions on any other parts of the study guide, Micah? On the puzzle piece study guide? Yeah. Okay. So number 4 on the puzzle piece study guide, we have Yvette has up to $2,000 to invest and chose to put her money into telecommunications and pharmaceuticals. The telecommunications investment is to be no more than 4 times the pharmaceuticals investment. Like all the equations or inequalities that could describe the situation, let X be the amount in dollars invested in telecommunications and Y be the amount in dollars invested in pharmaceuticals. All right, lots of information there. You might need to read it a few times, but the first time, just read it to see what's going on and what you need to figure out. So it says select all the equations or inequalities that could describe this. Instead of going line by line to tell you why it might not be that one, it'd probably be easier, since there's so many, to just identify all the constraints and make an inequality or an equation to define. So what's a constraint in this situation? And what about the 2000? she has up to 2,000 to invest. So that's a constraint. That's something that's limiting. Sorry, I can't see my mouse, so I need to go back here. All right, but she has up to 2,000 to invest. If she has up to 2,000, does that mean she can invest less than 2,000? So if she has up to 2,000 to invest, she is allowed to invest less than that. Is she allowed to invest exactly 2,000? So then it should be that symbol. Now, when you look at the answer options where it's talking about the 2,000, you don't want to use just the equal sign because it's also allowed to be less than. This one looks like it'd be good. This one doesn't show that it could also be 2,000, and this one's facing the wrong way. So then see if x plus y on the other side makes sense. What are they saying x has to be? Feel free to reread if you don't know. So it says X is the dollar amount invested in telecommunications. And we're talking about how much money she's allowed to invest total. And then Y is the amount invested in pharmaceuticals. So combined, which means add, this needs to be less or equal to 2,000. So that does make sense to choose this one. Now for the other parts that are there, see what else is a constraint in this. So what else is she limited to in this? Okay, so telecommunications, what variable did we say had to be telecommunications? So X has to be no more than 4 times the pharmaceuticals investment. So 4 multiplied by the pharmaceuticals investment, which was Y. If it can be no more than that, should I use this sign? So then flip it around. It can be less than it if it has to be no more than 4 times the pharmaceuticals. Is it allowed to be exactly it? So then put the line underneath if that's the case. The one that matches that is this one. The top one doesn't make sense because that has it being times the wrong thing. It said 4 times the pharmaceuticals, not telecommunications. This one has it facing the wrong way. This one, again, multiplying by the wrong thing. So it's just going to be these two for this example. And of course, yours is probably shuffled, so make sure you pick the right ones. Questions on that one? Questions on any others? Any other study guide? All right, going on. All right, then if you have other questions before we end today, then feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll post the keys to the constructed response soon, and you can check your answers to that in Schoology. What else? You can email me your questions. You can watch the class recording from the other parts of the day that they asked us. But the test is tomorrow, so you have to ask all your questions prior to the test, not during. Question? Okay. I could check them.